Hi, my name is Christopher Malcolm, and welcome to Movable Canvas, where we talk about the movies. And we talk about what makes a good movie into a great film. I was only 19 years old when Tupac Shakur was killed at the age of 25. I was still finding myself at a time when rap music itself was still finding its feet. I still believed in heroes. I was still susceptible to the words of a prophet. Of course, if I called Tupac Shakur a prophet in 1996, or even a musician for that matter, I would have more than likely been met with just an audible sigh. Long before hip-hop became a driving force in American culture, and way before you would even think that a rapper would ever win a Pulitzer, rap music was just for us. Young, disaffected black and brown youth, invisible to much of society outside of our entertainment value on the 10 o'clock news as super predators or as a way to scare up some funding to fight a war on drugs instead of a war on poverty. And yes, that was a paraphrase from Tupac himself. You see, Tupac spoke for us. Far from a perfect messenger, he stood out among other urban poets with a charisma that was second only to maybe Muhammad Ali or Elvis Presley. Once-in-a-generation figures that transcended their own particular specialty to become world figures based really on the sheer force of their personality. The last 2 decades continue to bear that out, as the old and young continue to speak his name as if he just released an album last week as opposed to having had his heyday nearly a quarter century ago. The people who 25 years ago would have seen our Prince as nothing but a street thug now have really no choice but to accept his place as one of the most important forces in pop culture, even if many still do have a misconception of what exactly it was that Tupac stood for. To be fair, that misconception is not completely without reason. Aside from the diamond-studded nose, the big smile, and the bandana tied backwards around the top of his head, probably the most memorable visual thing about Tupac was the rather large Thug Life tattoo he had across his midsection, the inked eye topped with a scar from a bullet hole. From the outside looking in, it's easy to see why someone would look at the tattoo, look at the scar, and just hear Pac's constant refrain of the words Thug Life and think that he's little more than a criminal with a microphone. After all, aren't rappers just all gangsters anyway? At least that's the view from the outside. But those of us that were from Tupac's generation, those whom his words were intended to reach, we knew more than to judge a book by its cover. Perhaps it was because we ourselves were so sick and tired of being judged by our covers. Or perhaps it was because we had seen firsthand Tupac's evolution from sidekick roadie to Oakland-based rap group Digital Underground to New Black Panther with his first album, Trapped. Although many people got to know him via his party beats like I Get Around or California Love, those who were with him from the beginning always associated him with his socially conscious tones, and that social conscious continued all throughout his career, even in his later music as he gained more fame and fortune. We also knew that that famous Thug Life tattoo, it was a bit of a red herring. Yes, by any measure that tattoo did make Tupac look pretty badass. But those of us within our world would be well aware that the famous Thug Life tattoo was really just an acronym. So what did it stand for? The hate you give little infants fucks everyone. While it may seem trite to some, this outwardly gangster styling was really a call to social action. Many of Tupac's songs may have just seemed to be the ballad of the urban outlaw, but those of us who were listening closely, we understood that he was making a clarion call. We were hearing our generation's call for action. The man who was born in jail, son of a Black Panther, and nephew to legendary icon Assata Shakur, was trying to help his community the best way he knew how, through his art. The world may have seen a criminal, but in reality he was just a highly intelligent, highly charismatic, gifted young man. Not without problems and flaws, but blessed with the gift of humanity and the ability to translate that to the world. I start with that personal and somewhat long-winded story because I think it's essential in understanding the effect of George Tillman's new film, The Hate You Give, based on Angie Thomas's best-selling novel entitled after, well, that famous tattoo. The film is wide-reaching, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. It takes on the rather complex issue of police brutality and the dangers faced by people of color, not only from dangers within their own community, but also from the people sworn to protect it. Now, I'll admit, when I first saw the trailer, that while I was excited that this type of movie existed, I wasn't exactly that excited to rush out the door and see it. After all, if you haven't noticed, I am a black man in America. And while I'm happy to have a movie sticking up for me, I've lived through enough encounters with the LAPD to understand Black Lives Matter without having to have a movie to explain it to me. I'm glad the movie existed for people who haven't had that experience. But for me, I've been through enough real-life situations that I didn't really expect the movie to have much of an effect on me. Boy, was I wrong. After the third time during the 2-hour and 12-minute film that the movie theater got a little dusty, I realized that George Tillman had put together a movie that was really special and something worth seeing no matter what side of the issue you take. I mentioned George Tillman because I think his presence as director is really the key to taking the film from being kind of Black Lives Matter 101 into the realm of something really deep and personal and something that everyone should be able to relate to. Tillman's breakthrough movie was 1997's Soul Food, which focused on the complicated family dynamics of a black family living in Chicago. His first wise decision in the new film is to continue that family focus. By focusing on family first in The Hate You Give, Tillman allows us to be more drawn into the story and the result to be more affecting. Tillman humanizes his characters, allowing the audience to gain a certain level of empathy with each character so that when we end up in situations either within or beyond their control, the audience is then able to understand what they're going through from a deeper perspective. We see them as complete human beings and thus understand the source of their pain. In short, he shows us that their lives matter. This is, of course, the entire objective of organizations like Black Lives Matter, which I should point out, I've probably mentioned more in this review than is actually mentioned in the movie. The idea being to show that victims of violence in the black community are more than just statistics. They are so much more than wild animals often drawn as caricatures on the evening news. Just like anyone, these are real people with real hopes and real dreams doing whatever they can to achieve them. Not super predators born to be a threat. When an unarmed black man is murdered by a police officer early in the film, we've already gotten a chance to get to know him. So when stories start to flood the news about him being a common street thug, or painting his normally elegant mother in the worst possible light, we understand that these are just fabrications because we've already gotten to see the real thing. We understand that the world is not getting the full story. When the loving father of three is handcuffed and humiliated on the street for trying to defend his family, we understand the story behind the story. Where the cops in that case just saw another gangbanger, we see the man. Both the film and movements to end police shootings are about seeing behind the facade. Neither is about placing blame. Instead, they're about how stopping to see the entire human being serves all sides better and helps us function better as a community. Tupac Shakur wasn't just an ex-con shot dead on the Las Vegas Strip. He was a son, he was a father, a poet, an activist, an artist, and a leader. One that deserved to be seen beyond preconceived notions based on his exterior. As one character mentions, nearly a quarter century since his death, his words still ring truer than ever. The hate you give little infants fucks everyone. This little film is hopefully just one step in helping us all understand each other better and help us stop passing down preconceived notions to the generations to come. So what do you think? Did you like the film? What were your thoughts? Feel free to put your comments in the comment section below. And if you like this kind of content, be sure to hit that subscribe button, as every week I like to come back to talk about movies and what makes a good movie into a great film. Thanks for watching.